There you are. You did it yourself. Hi, welcome.
Hello.
So today we are first going to be joined by toddle Engineer Marija, and we're going to be learning all about best practices, about working with variables in toddle and all of the fun stuff you can do with some toddle examples. Next, we're going to hear from Lennart about a fun app that Lennart built on toddle. And he's going to show us around, tell us some interesting problems that he solved. Thirdly, I am going to tell you all about the new baseline initiative. I will tell you more about that later. And then we're going to have a toddle Q&A. And so we're going to run this portion of the session with Marija as kind of a Q&A, because I've noticed quite a few of you in the Discord have had many questions about variables as you're building your projects. And so we are going to tell you, hopefully, the best way to deal with variables and how it works under the hood, including context and all of that other good stuff. So first of all, the first question I wanted to ask, which I've seen asked a few times potentially, say I have 100 variables in one component in toddle, and it's getting really, really difficult to manage. I have no idea what is on, off, true, false. What can I do about it?
Yeah. So I think in that way, like we should think about, like if it's so many variables that we have in one place, a page or a component, we should think about, is there a way that maybe we can organize them better? Like, for example, if we have, let's say we want to store some information about the user. So instead of having like variables for username, user email, user surname, or so on, and all different variables for all of them, instead of that, maybe we can combine them into one object. And that would be like a variable as an object, and then we can put all the different properties that are for that user. So we will have the name, the surname, the email, the address, or so on. Or maybe the other thing that we can think about here is there maybe a way that we can split this component into more smaller components? In that way, if we do that, in each of the child components, we can create the needed variables, and that way it will look much cleaner and it will be more simple. So I would guess that.
So what I find difficult coming from traditional development, text-based development, is a lot of these concepts are true across the board in normal coding. And you would never usually have separate defined variables in a JavaScript file, for example, for user email, username. You'd have a user object, and usually that user object comes from a database or something like that. And I guess I'm just saying it for my benefit, is that it's just JavaScript. It's just the way that we work with text-based code. It just feels a little bit different sometimes inside of a visual environment. So there is one thing, though, given I know how to do this in code. Say you have, you're using objects to manage data in variables. And say I want to update like user.name inside the object without having to reset the whole user object and like copy one set of data again to the new set of data. How do we do that?
Sorry, did you said like if you have an object, you just want to get the value for one of the properties or to change one of the properties in that object?
To change the value of one of the properties in the object.
Yeah, okay. Maybe I can show you like some examples, so it would be easier to see. Let me share my screen. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So for example, if we have a variable, I think this one is an object. We have like a cookies version and then it has extension, right? So that's an object. So if we want to change it, only one of the properties in that object, I will just use the onload here just as an example. Then I will need to set the extension data. And here in the formula, I will get the current value of the extension data. And then I can use this set. In the path, I will define the property that I want to set. So it has extension. And then here would be the value that I would like to use it. And that's it. Then we will have the new value.
So is it like each object property has like a get and a set method by default kind of thing?
Yeah, like actually you're just accessing it's like in the JavaScript, right? You have the extension data object, and then like what we are doing there, like extension data dot has extension, and then you're setting it a new value for it. So it's the same here.
And you can do that inside a workflow, and can you do it inside a formula, for example, as well?
Yes. I mean, like if you want to change the value of the variable, you need to do it in the workflow. But then using the formula, so you can just pass a static value, or you can use a formula. Like in this case, we will need a formula to set just a single property in that object.
And that set extension data formula that you're calling in the workflow, that's predefined by the project. It's defined in the project, right?
Yes.
Yes. Cool. Okay. So next question. Tell me about the context and how you expose a variable in the context, why you would expose a variable into the context, and what it can be used for, with an example if you have one.
Yeah. Okay, so in toddle, you can expose the variable to the context using the formula. Like you cannot just go in the created variable and expose it from there. You just need to have a formula where you will expose the value of that variable, and then using the formula, there is an option to expose it to the context, and then it would be available there. So when we would like to expose a variable to a context, so let's say we have a component with many child. And if we have like a variable in that component, in the parent one, and we want to use that data from that variable in the other child components, so what we can do here is like either we can just pass it through the attributes. That's the one way. And then the other way is to create it, to expose it to the context, and then just when you're in the child component, use the context and then get the value of the variable that you need. So, for example, if we have like only a parent and then a child component, it's easy to just pass it as an attribute. But then let's say if we have like a parent with so many child components, or then in that child component we have other child components. So instead of passing through each of the components in the tree, the easier way would be like to expose it in the context, and then from the child components you can just easily access it.
So it's very similar, if you're familiar with React, to how you would use React context rather than drilling props down into lots and lots of children in the React world.
Yes.
Cool. Yeah, so one of the questions I asked earlier was like, what if you have loads and loads of variables and you would put it into an object? So if you have loads and loads of attributes, maybe you want to consider not adding an extra attribute and then just using the context to access data that way. It's all about keeping things more manageable. Okay, my last question is, because I actually don't know the answer to this yet. Say I'm using a custom action. I'm writing custom code, I'm writing JavaScript. How can I set the value of a variable in a custom action?
Yeah, I think there was some topic, like some questions about that on Discord, if I remember recently. And then, So if you have like a custom action, let's say you have some code over there that is running, and then you go in some of the components or somewhere in toddle, and in one of the workflows, you want to call that action, right? So then when you're calling that action, you can actually, if you want to expose the data from the action to some of the variables that you have in toddle, then what you can do is you can use the callback function. In the action itself, you can create an event and then just use the trigger action event in that action, and then just pass the data that you want to expose it into. For example, if you want to save it in the variable in toddle, you just pass that data, and then when you're calling the function in the workflow, you can just access the data that you're passing from the custom action and then set it to a variable.
So Jacob says you can use context workflows. Is that basically what you described?
Yes.
Or is that different? That's the same. Okay, and to set, it is great for doing some validation before setting, but you can also just call set variable inside that workflow. Excellent. Yes. Thank you. Lennart also asked about something we were talking about. I think we were talking about context and exposing variables in context. Or I can't remember when it was. Can you do this 2 layers deep too? I think Lennart's typing again to, it was about the set formula. Okay, so when you were setting a value of a property inside an object, can you do that 2 layers deep? Like if that has extension thing that you showed us had another object in it. So you could you technically set like has extension dot name to something?
Yes. So the in that case, like, let me try to show you again. I can share my screen. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yeah. So for example, if let's say here in the has extension, we had like another property under that. So that what we can do here is we can use an array, and then here do it like this. So this will set the value to the extension data dot has extension dot property name.
Perfect.
And you can go as deep as you want with using this.
Great, thank you. And there's one more question from Lewu. What would be the best way to edit a contexted variable from the parent, from the child? So let's say you have a variable that's you've got a child that's 4 levels deep, and it's using a context variable. I guess you would just, it's because it's available in the context, you could just set it any way you want from anywhere, right? In a workflow?
Well, no, I don't think so. I think right now we can just pass the variables, let's say, through the formula in the context, and then we can just read them in the child components. But if we want to change them, we still need to have the onChange event that we are going to call it from the child element, and then in the parent element, we can just do whatever we want with that onChange event. In our case, that will be to set the value to the new variable, the new value to the variable.
Actually. That makes sense. I could probably feel like a lot of weird edge cases that could come from being able to set anything from anywhere that could end up being very hard to manage, actually, I think. All right, we are up out of time for this section. So thank you so much, Marija. Really helpful for me, especially given I'm still new to Toddle, and I'm still building my website, and it's going to take me a while because I got lots of other stuff to do. But thank you so much, Marija, and I hope you have a great day from now on. And let's welcome Lennart to the stage. Thank you, Marija. Goodbye. Invite to speak. Found it that time. Welcome, Lennart. How are you doing? We cannot hear you. This is where you need to turn the music on while Lennart sorts out the microphone, which I shall do, actually, so I can dance along. Such suspense. Can't hear you. Discord is the worst. I mean, it's the best. Don't come and find me, Discord. I feel like I should tell you a joke now. My child has been getting into knock-knock jokes recently, and he is terrible at them. I don't have a joke to tell you right now. I didn't plan for this. I should plan for this more. We will give Lennart a little moment. Feel free to tell me jokes in the chat, and I will read them out for the entertainment of the viewers. Casper laughed. That's good. One of the jokes he said to me was knock, knock. And I said, who there? And he said, knock, knock. And I said, who's there? And he said, no, my name's Knock, Knock. I think he's got a bit of a way to go. Is Lennart back? Can I see? Did he? I thought I saw someone come back. Yep, should work now, hopefully. Where are you? I can't see. There you are. Let's go. We're doing it live.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Welcome,
Awesome.
Lennart. Thank you for joining us. We have a very special honor of learning all about Lennart's app, which I hear is about feet.
Yep. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us.
I'm still surprised my app is doing as well as it's doing, but I'm not complaining about that. And yeah, do you want me to explain what it is very briefly, and then
Yes,
maybe
let's do that.
Okay, so basically what it is very similar to Instagram. You can post an image, you can like an image, you can follow someone on their profile, you can obviously look at their profile, you can chat to them, and you have some settings. Yeah, that's basically it. And it's for feet, right? So it's for people who enjoy feet. And that's why my client told me to build it, because people on Instagram, they get banned for posting their feet and on other platforms. And so we created a place specifically for that, where people who want to see that can go there, and the people who don't want to see that don't have to see it on the other platforms. So that's the basic thing. And what's really funny is that it's my first toddle app ever. So I didn't know about toddle before I started it. And I did the tutorial week with the weather app, and I think it was a to-do list. Yeah, basically Instagram for feet, exactly. And yeah, it has a lot of stuff that I wouldn't do in a second version that I'm building now, that I did in the first one, because it was my first app ever. But I actually messaged all the no-code tools, because I came from Webflow, and Webflow told me it's not possible because there are guidelines and whatnot. And I messaged a bunch of tools like Bubble and SoftR or whatever, and they all told me I couldn't do it, right? And then I messaged Andreas. He was like, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." And that's why I picked on.
How many users does the app have?
We're around 200 girls and around 2,000 users. So I call them models and users. Yeah, and it's been 2.5 months, I think, since we launched. Yeah.
So tell us about some of the more challenging features that you built and the problems that you solved.
So one of the more complicated things was obviously the chat. I struggle a lot with the real-time stuff from Xano, and I had to write a custom formula for the date changes, right? So when you have multiple messages, they're just sorted by date. But then when it's a new day, right, from Tuesday to Wednesday, you want to display, hey, we got a new day. And so you need to insert stuff in that messages array, dynamically. That was really interesting. And also stuff like the infinite scroll, right? In the beginning, I didn't even think of this because it was obviously my first app. I was just loading all the posts, right? And in my test database, I only had 20 posts, which it worked fine for. So I was loading all the posts in the feed. And then obviously now we have 5K posts. That doesn't really work. So I load like 20 posts, and then when you get to the end of the list, I load the next 20 posts, and that's just using the intersection observer. But figuring out the pagination for that was pretty tricky, because sometimes it would like double, like duplicate posts, and yeah, it's not as easy as it sounds.
Problem everywhere. You see that everywhere. I see that on eBay. I see that on loads of like different shopping sites. It's just no one's got it figured out. So you're doing great.
Yeah. To be honest, I'm surprised at. So I also did like the support, because I was the only one knowing what's going on, right? Like nobody else could have done any support for this. And funnily enough, the only problems people had were logging in. And I was so concerned about like performance and, I don't know, the chat going all wrong and settings not working properly, but it was just people logging in that was the main problem. And in the first week, I had like 100 people got me, I can't log in, the code's not working, blah, blah, blah. So
Do you remember what the issue was with that?
No, not really. So I'm using an OTP, right? So I'm not doing a email password, but you sign up, and then you get an email with a code, and you put that code in. And the first thing that I fixed is that you actually click a link where it automatically fills in that code, instead of you just having to copy it, right? And it's also because the sign-up flow was really, really bad. So when you signed up as a model, a lot of models signed up as a user account on accident, and then they tried logging in as a model, and it was just really mixed up, and I didn't have any structure on that. Yeah, my feed is the name. We spent a lot of time on the name, by the way.
I love it. And what you mentioned in your submission form about recording audio messages. How does that work? And like, what's the use case for that on an Instagram for feet?
Actually, my client didn't really care too much about it, but I was like, I gotta make that work, because it just, well, I don't know what they're saying in the voice messages. I haven't heard any of them. But I'm using Wave server. It's a JavaScript library. And it's a little slow, at least the way I did it. But it gives you a recording functionality, basically, which is access to microphone, and then it draws out the waveform, which is what I really wanted, right? So it's more than just like seconds counting; it's just actually responds to how your voice is. And then it also shows that waveform in the chat, which is. I cared about
so
it
it's
a lot.
for chat. I imagined that people could leave audio messages on posts rather than just likes.
Oh, no. We don't even have comments, because I was like not moderating the comments.
Good idea. Good idea. You'd need a whole team for that.
Yeah, and it's also, I don't know what the point is of the post. Like if they want to chat, they can do that in private, right? There's no need for comments. But yeah,
yeah. Next question. So you say you're rebuilding it again. Actually, no. We have one question in the chat from Casper. Are you the owner or is it client work?
Well, I'm technically the owner because I own the database, but no, this is from a client. And I actually built his website before, so I know him. And then he came to me with this idea, and I was like, well, I can't do it right now, but let me try and see if I can figure it out. Which is also, in my opinion, the craziest part about all of this is that like a year ago when he came to me with this idea, it's about a year ago, I was like, I know how to write like 2 lines of JavaScript. So basically nothing. I just know Webflow. I don't even know why Webflow works with the CSS and stuff. I just make it work. And then I think in September I started, and within like 2 months I was at a stage where, well, okay, this is working, which is incredible, right? Like if I actually thought about completely coding it hard, like the traditional way, coding it from scratch, but I started like a week, and I was like, oh, I'm not gonna do that.
I think you made a good choice.
Yeah. And also with updates, right? It's so much easier for me to go into toddle. And like I added a English version, like the language switcher, like a day before we launched. That wouldn't have been possible if I actually, coded it myself.
Nice. So what are you doing differently in version 2, and what did you learn, and how did that influence what you're doing differently?
So a lot of it is in the database. So I didn't know about database normalization. My database is terrible. For example, I was like storing the blocked users in an array inside of the users table. And now I just have a different table, right? Same with likes.
The relations, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that is causing a lot of performance issues, which I'm doing differently. There's a bunch of small stuff like the light and dark mode and language settings. I used to store them in local storage, but local storage is client-side rendered, right? So you have like a second where it displays the German version and then it switches to the English version, which sucks. Same for light and dark mode, which is really not a nice experience. And so I switched it to cookies, which make it server-side rendered. So just setting a cookie and getting the cookie is really nice. And also I'm making it a PWA, so I can actually send push notifications onto their phone, which is one of the main complaints, because none of those platforms have it. Like the Blue, I don't know if I can say the name, like OnlyFans, they don't have push notifications at all, right? And so there's a bunch of platforms that make it really difficult. Because like, first of all, the user forgets about it, right? Like if you don't get a message, like, you forget about it. And then also for the girls, it's really annoying to not be notified when someone messaged you. So that's the thing I'm doing.
Those of you who don't know, PWA stands for Progressive Web App, and it's about kind of trying to make the experience of an offline app and an online app like a bit more seamless, and it offers more native functionality when you have a PWA, like access to push notifications.
And it also removes the Safari, at least on an iPhone, removes the navigation from your browser, so you have a lot more screen real estate to work with.
And you can then easily install it on your home screen, so it's still a website, but it behaves like an app. And that's, I think, a big selling feature of PWAs, because a lot of clients might request, I've had this in the past, we need a mobile app. We don't want a website. We want a mobile app because we need to create a sticky experience for people. They need to install it on their phone, and we need to be able to push notifications at them. And you can do that with a PWA. It's kind of a middle ground between a native app, but it's still a website, and it's pretty cool. No Code Pro Code says mobile apps are better, and we all know why No Code Pro Code is saying that.
However, I wouldn't be able to put my app on the App Store, right? Because they're not a fan of it. So this
potentially.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I haven't tried, but I assume so.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you so much. And I got to say to you, congratulations, actually, for building this app and having so many users and using Toddle, even though you didn't have much traditional development experience. Props to you for also trying, but then props to Toddle for enabling you to actually build something. So thank you so much. Round of applause for Lennart. Thank you for joining us. And we're going to move on. Look at that. My timing is impeccable. It's just 1:30 the hour. I'm going to go on to the next section, which is presented by me. Thank you so much, Lennart.
Thanks so much.
See you soon. Bye.
Yeah.
Next, I want to talk to you about baseline. But first of all, I want to tell you a story about web development in the good old days. But they were not good old days. They were very bad old days. When I first started my professional development career in 2014, you had to support all sorts of nonsense browsers. I remember building one thing, which was an e-commerce platform startup, and we had to support IE6 or some nonsense like that. And at the time, I was on a Mac, so I had to get like some kind of virtual box, virtual machine thing that had a version of Internet Explorer, and I had to switch between them, and I had to make sure all of my code worked on all of the different browsers. Now, the way this problem was solved kind of back in the day, because browser support was very inconsistent, was through the prolific use of polyfills. And polyfills are basically JavaScript code that replicate modern features of JavaScript and CSS in older browsers. So when you need a polyfill in older browsers, you're downloading more JavaScript, and it's kind of a bit rubbish. You're having to make sure, all your testing is on loads of different browsers. You're having to write extra code to support all of these new features. And it wasn't a good time. Things are slightly better now. There are still discrepancies between browser support, especially with some of the new CSS features that are coming out and a lot of the experimental stuff. I feel like experimental stuff is coming out a lot quicker these days, I think, because technology moves fast. But I do want to share with you this article by Erwin Hoffman, who I actually met last year at React Norway. He gave a great interactive talk about browser features and accessibility and all that kind of stuff. But Baseline was released at the beginning of this year, and it's about educating people and finding an easy way to show browser compatibility for different browser features. And you might see this on documentation that you've seen in the world. I think it's already live on like MDN and Can I Use, and probably some other sites. I will show you how it works in a minute. But it's all about helping us developers keep up with technologies and to try to make it less overwhelming and to help us understand what features we can use. And I think it's also targeting like non-developers in a way. So you might get a product manager who says, can we do this, please? And you're like, actually, no, because XYZ, it doesn't work in this browser. And this is a really good way to actually back up your claim to say, we can't use it yet because it's not stable across all browsers. Maybe it's still in technology preview or something. And it's about understanding what web features are safe to use across all major browsers. So it aims to bring clarity to information about browser support. And it was created really to solve the problems that I was just talking about. Unnecessary polyfills is what we want to avoid. And before, we would have to go back and forth between lots of different websites to understand what's usable. MDN would have their own compatibility table. Then you might want to go to Can I Use, which might be up to date, might be out of date. And sometimes some of the things on Can I Use might not be on MDN. And it was all a bit of a mess. So Baseline was introduced by Google in 2023, actually, and now it's kind of all become mainstream. And this is how you'll see Baseline reports on different types of documentation. I believe it's a web component. If we click here on Baseline component, yes, it's a web component widget displaying baseline status of a web feature. So all of the people who are working on the web and working on the web documentation, they're all using this same thing. And obviously, once something is updated in the main repo, everything gets pushed out. So everything stays up to date, and that is the main point. It's kind of a good example of why web components are good in this way. Back in the day, I used to build a lot of static websites. And actually, I have an example to show you what I used to do. Hang on. Yeah, let me just go over here. On my homepage, I have this, which is a web component. Well, it used to be a web component. And the reason why I made this a web component is that so everyone could use it who was in this web ring. And then every time I pushed a change to the web ring data and added a new site to it, then everyone would automatically get it. Fun fact, I turned this web component into a statically rendered thing because I was really, really, really trying to push the limits of reducing performance times across the board. I went really hard, like unnecessarily hard on performance on this. But using this as a web component means that whenever something else is updated, everyone who's using the web component will benefit from that new data. So it has been used in a variety of places, and it tells you if things are limited availability, baseline new, which developers can adopt for most users, and they are calling out progressive enhancement here. And if you're not familiar with progressive enhancement, that it is where you may choose to use a very kind of experimental feature that only works in maybe one browser, but you're consciously providing a graceful fallback to the functionality. For example, say if you have something that uses the some crazy new CSS animation thing, rather than just pretending that it doesn't exist for some browsers, you actually provide an alternative animation for browsers where it doesn't work. Kind of similar to a polyfill, but more like intentional and manual for that. And then the baseline widely available is stable for 30 months, at least 30 months. So anything that is baseline widely available, go use. Maybe use newly available with caution, because it could change, I think, potentially. I think 30 months is a lot for transition time, but also I think it shows that the developers here really want to make sure that it's stable until they can say that it's stable. So why should you care about baseline? Why is it important? And it's funny because they do call out here that if you're a product owner, project manager, or marketer, you might think it's just for developers. But understanding baseline helps everyone make better product decisions. So, for example, Lennart, if Lennart's client says, I want this fancy thing, I saw someone share this on social media and it looks great. And Lennart takes a look at see if it's available, what baseline status it is, and say it's limited availability. It's an easy way to communicate to the client that probably shouldn't implement that yet, and we should focus on cleaning up our database or something like that. And this is a good one too, strategic feature planning. Rather than planning is an interesting one, right? Because a lot of the time we want to get to the most wow experience like straight away. And with this kind of thing, it helps you plan out when you will be able to use that. So when something is baseline newly available, maybe you don't want to plan it in to your sprint planning or your product plan until that 30 months has passed. If you want to be really, really like pedantic about it. Granted, that's 30 months is a long to wait, and your product might fail before then. But it could be an interesting way to bring that into your planning, in developer planning meetings and product planning meetings. It could be quite interesting. So there is a real example here that Erwin calls out. Your team wants to reduce the amount of JavaScript by switching to the loading attribute. It's exciting and easy to use attribute that replaces your JavaScript lazy loading library. So before loading came out, everyone was kind of lazy loading with custom JavaScript. But when you switch to the loading attribute, you won't break the experience of Firefox and Safari users by removing the JavaScript solution. However, without checking baseline first, it will unexpectedly result in those browsers downloading all images at the same time, regressing overall load time. So if you really care about performance and these kind of things, checking out baseline for those features that you might want to use would be a really good call. So I wanted to show you how it looks in the wild. I don't know if you've ever come across caniuse.com. It's mainly used for CSS, but I've mainly used it for CSS, but I think it's used for a lot of other things. For example, like image types. So we've got WebP here. WebP is baseline, widely available across major browsers. AVIF, however, which is the next generation of image, is only newly available across major browsers. And the last time I was doing loads of stuff about AVIF, it wasn't available in all browsers. And so you've got to make sure you provide a fallback to those images. And normally you would do that like in a picture tag using a source set, and the browser will load the one that is most appropriate. But it's a good job that most major browsers now will load AVIF. Let's say something really silly. I wonder if I could search for JavaScript here. What we were talking about, the temporal API last year. No, I think it's just CSS. Actually, maybe I am correct and it is just CSS. Let's use container queries. It's not searching it for me. What is it? Contains? See, I don't even know. Let's just click on another one. Let's click on DVH, small, large, and dynamic viewport units. Baseline 2022. So it came at baseline in 2022, and is actually having the date on the baseline here is a really good indicator of how stable it might be. I wonder if like display has like baseline. Display block. I don't think I have no idea how to use this website, clearly. But there you go. It's not searching what I want, everything. But here we go. Search temporal. Did that work? Why am I not? Is it just like crashing because I'm spelling it? I'm spelling it wrong every single time. Temporal. Hang on. Let me just click this link. Copy link. I don't know how I was spelling it so wrong. Limited availability across major browsers. Boo. But it'll come. And look, if you hover over these little things, or if you click these little things, it'll tell you, it'll learn more about baseline. Feedback for baseline. You can even provide your own feedback. So that is that's baseline, and I just wanted to tell you about it because it could become really, really useful for you, and you might see it everywhere. Let's just see it on MDN. Let's have a look at stop propagation. Baseline, widely available. This is the video that I made last week, and you can see some more information here as well. See full compatibility. Scrolls down to here. Lovely. So there is the baseline. Hope you enjoy it, and you can make some good stuff by understanding what's available to you in all your browsers. And one thing to call out here as well is, I think one of the really important things to do when you're building apps is actually understanding what browsers and devices your users are actually using. And are they mainly on mobile, or are they mainly on Firefox or Safari? And then depending on that data you have, maybe then you can implement that feature that isn't baseline but only works in Safari and provide progressive enhancement because most of your users are on Safari. So it's all about the context, and it's all about just being armed with knowledge to do the best job you can do. And now, after that, we are moving on to the Q&A portion of the office hours for the last 15 minutes. And please remember to keep the questions Toddle and Toddle community specific or web specific, and I will attempt to answer your question, and we can just go from there. Temporal is a myth. That's not a question, Andreas. If you want to come and join me on the stage as well to have a discussion and ask your question, then I would welcome you to. Or you can ask your question in the chat and I will just riff and tell jokes. I might get Andreas on the stage with me, actually, because he's been too quiet. He's been too quiet today. Where are you? Come back to me.
Hello. Oh, God.
Hello. You're not prepared for any of this, are you? Lucas says, field sizing content is great too with fallback for other browsers. I've never even heard of that property, Lucas. I feel like I don't know anything about CSS these days. Discuss.
Yeah, it really is a moving target, isn't it?
Yes. You kind of take your eye off the ball for like 6 months to a year, and like everything changes. Everything's different. I'm certainly going to be using Baseline. What is the name of Lennart's app? Arrived late. Scroll up in the chat. I don't know. It feels weird saying it, don't you think?
A fetish.
My fetish. Dot something. Come on, Lennart, get some users. We got Lucas and Iwoo typing in the chat. Lucas is telling us that field sizing content allows for inputs to automatically expand while typing. That sounds glorious.
Is it though?
Oh, let's have a look.
I think.
Let me have a look. Let's go to can I use field sizing. Oh, it doesn't even have, I'll share my screen. It doesn't even have the baseline selection, the baseline component on it. But it does not work in Safari or Firefox, i.e. obviously big warning flags. It's not being updated, but works on Chromium browsers, it seems.
I mean, really, what's wrong with wrapping the input in an element, then putting a secondary invisible element on, typing the same text into that, having that expand with the same font so that you can automatically push the container, and then having the input resize like that? Why do we need a field sizing property?
Nothing wrong with that.
No.
Just write all that JavaScript.
Just do all those things. Yeah.
What really grinds my gears is, if apps send you like a text message with a code in, and then you're on your phone and on an iPhone, and your little number pops up and you want to click on it, but they haven't, the app developers haven't allowed that to happen. So you have to read it and remember it and type it in manually. And then the app doesn't even auto submit when you filled in the last number. That's what grinds my gears.
Yeah. Speaking of baseline new stuff, well, actually not baseline yet, but
yes,
this one came up 2 days ago.
Let me open that one. I saw this and I got so overwhelmed with the fact that I have been so used to telling people, don't even bother trying to style your selects because there's no point. They should be native, leave them native, and don't even try, because I'm lazy. I'm a lazy developer. Select element can now be customized.
There wasn't much point in trying before because you literally couldn't do anything.
No. And then there was a lot of people who would, there's a lot of apps out there now who are using JavaScript to create a fake one. There's lots of packages out there doing that. Look at these customized selects. Do you know what? I like this bottom one, which has like 2 lines in it. Keep going. Come on, get to the last one. Look at that. It's got like a title and a subtitle.
Yep.
Appearance-based select. I mean, it's wild. People are going to be able to remove so much JavaScript from their apps. And I wonder how is this supported? Let's check on appearance-based select. Let's check that on can I use? Where's my can I use? Oh, it hasn't got it on.
No, it literally just landed only in Chrome.
Only in Chrome. Always Chrome.
I didn't even think it was going to be a standard because they talked about the select menu element, like actually the only element instead. So yeah, no, it's very maybe, but yeah, probably.
Do you think they might give up on it?
I don't know. I hope they'll they'll do it, but I don't know for sure that it's. I haven't checked up on how much of a spec it is. Sometimes Chrome and Google just make something, because then they don't have to debate with the other people in the committee. They'll just do it and get people to use it, and then kind of maybe bully their opinion through a little bit like that. So I'm not sure, but I'm guessing it's going to be at least a year before we get full support. Till then,
30 months.
Select.
Yeah, but what select?
Spark. That has all that stuff. Does it for you.
Yeah.
With lovely, lovely JavaScript somewhere hidden inside.
Beautiful. Beautiful. When will Casper wants to know when we'll see the appearance-based select in Toddle?
I mean, technically you can use it today. You can put in whatever custom CSS properties for us to support it in the style panel. I think we generally have a principle of we're only doing that when there's cross-browser support. So when it's at least baseline. Until then, we generally don't like put it in as a specific styling attribute.
I mean, the cool thing about it anyway, it's progressive enhancement, isn't it? So it does just fall back to a normal select, an ugly native select. Why did no one ever prioritize selects? Why? What? I don't understand the deal. Surely it's just a bit of CSS. It's simple CSS, Andreas.
It's so weird to me. I think date pickers are the same thing. I am of the generation of developers that remember waiting for HTML5 and being all excited about all the stuff.
Yes, I remember too.
It's a big game. And while there were obviously good things, so much of it was just, but I'm not writing articles. What do I need an article tag for? Also, article also means okay. Like, and then all the input elements that was like, oh, that would really save me so much time, but I can't use it because it'll only ever look like a Windows or Mac date picker. So it doesn't really matter. Yeah, they are starting to fix that now. I think the select was the first one they sort of addressed. And I think there's a plan to do the same for other types of inputs. But yeah, we'll see how long it takes them.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Do we have any questions? Ask your question. No question is too silly, or no question. I was about to say no question is too embarrassing, but that's probably false. Oh, got a question earlier. Any news about open sourcing Toddle? Will there be a no-code solution? How to self-host Toddle?
I'm not 100% sure what the last part means. But
I think just use. Yeah, I don't understand either. You have to build a Toddle self-hoster that has. It's too many layers deep.
So yes, so technically Toddle is already kind of open sourced and you can already pretty much self-host it. But what we're just working on now is some tutorials and guides to make it easy for people to understand. But we have our open source repo where we have the runtime and all the different things you need to do a Toddle server. That also includes, I think, some examples, among other, for running it on Cloudflare. And I think Eric, who's working on that, has been sort of touching up the last bit. So we have a good example of like, this is how you self-host it. We're going to release some videos, etc., on how to do that soon. So it's almost possible, pretty much possible. We just haven't really made it accessible yet. It also includes options when we roll it out to actually both import and export projects into Toddle. So you'll be able to go and find a branch and say, I want to download all of this stuff, all of the code. I don't know if we call it code. I still haven't figured out it's a big old JSON blob.
Artifacts.
Artifacts. Oh, that's a good one. So you can download your artifacts and then actually go and create a new project based on that as well. So import export will come along at the same time. But
spicy question.
We haven't announced the date yet. We'll do that very soon.
It'll be this year.
It will be next month because we're not gonna make it this one, I think. We have a few things before we get all the content out.
Very exciting. Lucas asks, will Toddle ever get native NPM support, or are packages the way our founding fathers intended?
I don't think we'll ever do well, it depends on what that means, I suppose. I think there's a lot of points we've talked issues that's always been with NPM is that you never really know what you're gonna get. It usually installs a bunch of stuff. So in our case, for someone to install an NPM package, we would have to also build that script, because what you install from NPM is never what you actually get to run. And there's a few services that sort of try and essentially build NPM packages and then host them. It's possible we would do something like that at some point if we felt like it was a key part that really unblocked people. But I don't think it is too much today. So yeah, I don't know that we have that we know yet, if that's something we want to add.
Lennart asks, can we use the view transition API in Toddle?
Yeah, you can. We haven't added any sort of first class support for it yet, for basically two reasons. One of them being that we generally don't do that until it's got cross-browser support. And the other one is that we wanted to figure out how to do it in a cool way that made it really easy to work with. And
yes,
it can be a little bit funky sometimes. So we've been looking into, is there ways we can make it easier to work with in different ways?
Visual Links has a very deep question. Why are animations? I ask myself the same thing every time.
I feel like there's two versions of that. There's the philosophical, like in general, or three even. There's the in general, why are they difficult? Then there's the why are they so difficult on the web? And then there's why are they so difficult in Toddle? And I think we've done a pretty good job with transitions. I generally like when working in Toddle, I find that works pretty well. At least definitely compared to whatever I've done before in pretty much any platform. So I feel like that works pretty well. There are some native web elements that just are a little bit difficult, like doing exit animations is notoriously always difficult because you're literally removing the thing you're animating, and then you can't animate things that aren't there. This is somewhere where view transitions are just a really cool way of doing that. So I think we're sort of going to look at a future for the web and therefore also for Toddle, where we have three ways we can animate things. We will have transitions, which is when you have like CSS properties and you're basically animating between them. So let's say you have a background color, and you can actually animate that background color if you're changing it from one to another, right? Classic little hover effect on button. If you animate the background, it looks just a little bit nicer, that kind of thing, right? Then we have keyframe animations, which is when you want to do more complex animations in CSS. We don't have support for that now, but it's possible that we might at some point very soon have something, possibly, that we would not at this point be ready to disclose if we did. It's also possible we don't, and this would be a massive tease. But yeah, so we might be ready to talk about that soon. If we were, we would want to do it in a very Toddle way, where we like took it to the next level and built something that we haven't really tried before. Because honestly, I think animations never really worked that well on the web. They were always kind of difficult to work with. It's always been like an extra sort of annoyance, and probably why we don't have so many of them on the web in general.
So what I've learned in my time here is that Andreas will continue talking until I stop him. And it is now on the hour. Thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. We'll be back same time next week. If you missed it, you can catch up on YouTube. Like and subscribe if you are watching this on YouTube. And we'll see you next week. Goodbye, everyone. You can carry on in the chat. Bye.